Well, hello. And here we are again. And as I promised, we were going to talk about how it was so much easier for me to come to the Midwest than to stay in the East. Things were becoming too expensive. Um, we were already starting to get the riots, and it was just getting dangerous. So I moved my children. Now I had 5 kids. I had to work 2 jobs, sometimes 3 to raise my children correctly. I mean, they went to Catholic schools. We were Catholic. And you had to tithe 10% of everything you made to the Catholic Church. Then you had to pay the Catholic school tuition for each child you sent to school, and you were expected to send your children to Catholic school. And plus, you had to buy the Catholic uniforms, and the Catholic schools had something going on. They had bake sales, or send money for Mary, or send money for St. Christopher, or send money for this or that. It was always money, money, money. Um, and with 5 children in 5 different classrooms, that kind of adds up. And then one was always making communion or confirmation, and and I had 4 boys. We were altar boys that had to pay for things, and so it was kind of expensive. We were actually Catholic poor. I'm just going to tell you. The Pope said you have to have children. You can't use birth control. And the point of getting married is to procreate. And we were taught this from the time we were 4 years old, going to Catholic instructions. So this is what we did. We procreated. We had children. We had big families. And it was expensive. It's expensive feeding 5 children, taking care of them, paying doctors, buying them things they needed, clothing, whatever, plus sending them to school, Catholic church. It all added up. I worked 1 job just to afford the Catholic church. So I was a nurse and I made fairly decent money, but it was just enough to pay the bills. I had to wait tables to be able to pay for being a Catholic. So when we moved out west, I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked. The rents were lower. The utilities were lower. The, the water was lower. The phones were lower. I went to the grocery store and could buy twice as much groceries for the same amount of money that I spent in New York. You went to the department stores, clothing was lower, and the town we moved to didn't have Catholic schools. They had one Catholic church. That was it. They're not prevalent all over the Midwest, or they weren't at that time. In the 80s, they weren't. It was becoming a new thing in the 80s. But but in New York, there's like a Catholic school for every church. And there's at least 4 Catholic church in every town. And so out here, you had to send your children to public school. Well, now I didn't have to pay for uniforms anymore. And I didn't have to pay for the Blessed Mother's endowment. And I didn't have to pay for St. Christopher to help the needy. And I didn't have to make donations to Catholic charities. And I didn't have to bake every weekend because there was bake sales going on and one class or another would sponsor it. I had 5 children. One of my kids were going to be in every class that did it. So I was saving money. I didn't have the Catholic expenses. All I had to do was tithe to the church. And amazingly, I was told by one of the nuns, you don't have to tithe 10%. You can tithe what you can afford because you have a big family. Well, nobody ever told me that before. They always told me I had to tithe 10%, and that was it. And so all of a sudden, I had more money. And I could buy my children regular clothes for school. I didn't have to buy uniforms from a secular company that the school picked out that were very expensive, and I'm almost certain the school's got a kickback on that. Because we were paying for uniforms that were they were astronomically expensive. The little clip-on ties were like $8 a piece. I mean, that's kind of high. But and then you had to have certain shoes and certain socks, and it was all crazy. So I didn't have this anymore. And luckily, I tried to waitress, but there was no fine dining, no Italian fine dining restaurants where I could make $100 a night. And I'm not even going to tell you what the nursing wages were in the West. So I got into real estate. I started selling real estate, and I did pretty well. I was doing very well in real estate, and I was kind of working for myself because I could work the hours I wanted to. I could go in the office during school hours. My broker was fine with that. I only had to work so many days a week in the office, and so in return for me being able to work from 9 to 2:30, I did it 4 days a week instead of 2. And I could show houses on my own schedule. So this was great. This was absolutely great. And and I found I really liked selling houses. I love walking through the houses and seeing all the wonderful amenities that they had. So I did pretty well. I worked for the flying realtor. He was a very good boss, and I did quite well on in real estate. I was able to get ahead. I was able to finish my education and get my master's, and I was able to see that my children had everything. So after a few years, I moved to Kansas City, and I sent my daughter to private Catholic schools there. And I sent her to college, and I sent my oldest son to college, and I was able to do things I couldn't have done in the East if I'd have stayed there. I was amazed at how I could afford a better life now. I kept looking, I kept putting every dime I could into savings, thinking the other shoe's going to drop any moment, but it didn't happen. So anybody thinking about making that move and leaving the East Coast, I have to tell you, it's the wisest thing you'll ever do. When I first come out here, yeah, it was hard. It was very hard. My children did not like it. Of course, they weren't used to it. My daughter loved it. All of a sudden, she had freedom. She didn't have to stay on the front porch. She didn't have to stay in a fenced-in yard. She could go down to the schoolyard with her friends and play. She could go around the block. She could go across the street to her friend's house. She had freedom she never had before, and she absolutely loved it. But the boys were not, there was no choir, there was no youth choir, and there was no Pop Warner, and there was no Little League, and no scouts. I mean, I guess there were scouts, but I don't know where they were. But at any rate, they didn't have the activities that they'd had in the East. So they had to adjust. So, but they did. They did adjust. That's the point. Two of them went back, but the other three adjusted well. And anyone who is considering a move to the Midwest, I have to tell you, if you're too scared, take 2 days, go to the Midwest, check into a hotel, and check it out. Check out rentals, check out grocery stores, check out department stores, and look at the difference. Look at utility prices. Look at the difference. You will not be sorry. Yes, it's a different culture, but you will adapt. You will adapt and you won't be sorry. Now, getting back to the Catholics, I know, I know that Pope Leo is trying to keep the Vatican the way it is. And when I come out to the Midwest, I have to tell you, the Vatican II is already going on. And believe me, in the Midwest, they jumped all over it. There was guitar masses and everything else. But I was an old Catholic. I was a cradle Catholic. I had always went to the Latin Mass. I didn't understand the Novo Ordos Mass. I didn't understand it at all. It was all in English and it was all backwards, and everybody was receiving communion in their hand and they were playing guitars, and so it was pretty screwy for me. But that's, I think at that point, that's when the Roman Catholic Church lost a whole lot of people because you went to Mass and you couldn't even follow it. And that's also the point where a lot of children were being molested by the priest. So I kind of have. I am a devout Catholic. I am. I'm a traditional Catholic, but I'm at the point when the Pope decides to excommunicate all those priests who molested innocent children, then he can go ahead and excommunicate the Catholics who are receiving the Latin Mass. Until then, he doesn't have a leg to stand on. And my other point is, he is not God. He thinks he is, but he's not. He's supposed to serve in the image of God, but he is not God. And he forgets that. And that's turning a lot of Catholics away. Yeah, he's getting a lot of people back in the church. Let me tell you who they are. They're the gays and the criminals and the sexual perverts, because all that's okay with the Catholic Church now. So what is he making the church into? He's trying to make it into a new world religion where everybody is the same. Catholics, Jewish, you know, Protestants, we're all the same now. Nobody's any different. But I don't want any part of that because Christ said the Catholics descend from the Jewish, which is the true religion. And that's the way I'm going to keep it. And besides that, I think that my relationship with Christ is my relationship. There's no room for the Pope or anybody else in that relationship. That's between me and the Almighty. And that should be that way with anybody. So I only serve one God. So if you're thinking about moving to the Midwest, I will tell you, you have a lot more freedom. You have more freedom to be who you want to be. You have more freedom to raise your family the right way. You have more freedom to live. You can go in the grocery store and you pick something up and you don't have to put it back because it's too much anymore. Well, I mean, I don't know about now. Now things are getting a little bit high now, but normally, even with things getting high, we're still paying less gas than New York. I live in Missouri. We pay half of what New York pays and everything. And I love it. I wouldn't give it up for anything. My neighbors are friendly. They wave to me. I know who my neighbors are. And I live in a nice community. And I just wouldn't give that up for anything. And like I said, if you're thinking about relocating, don't procrastinate. When you first do it, you'll have a lot of, oh my God, what did I do? You'll have a lot of second guessing, but you will not regret it in the end. I can tell you that. So stay tuned and we'll talk more about what's going on in today's world.